I want to share with you something that is a little more personal. And this is something I'm learning. Um, um, it's about when I went to this retreat, the last retreat 2 weeks ago on site. I want to tell you about the art of a healthy mind. Obviously, I am not coming as a therapist or psychologist. That's not my goal. But there are a couple principles that I think are very connected to the scriptures that have served me well. And what I want to do is share those with you and then open it up. I want to tell you the connection between how I see the Word of God and even this idea of how when I see myself in my relationship with God. At the end, I also have a bunch of resources of books where I'm bringing a lot of this information. And if you want those resources, because these are not things that I'm making up, I want to share them with you as well. I'll start with this quote. It's by Augustine. And he wrote this: Know thyself, and you will know God. Self understanding leads to knowledge of God. And in God, the trustworthiness of Christ is made clear. He continues, faith then is not blind. It is the awakening of reason to the divine. Now, let me put those in my words, because this is St. Augustine, okay? Trusting God begins understanding you and I are fully loved. And I'm talking about you and I as humans, not as Christians, because I want to make a distinction now. So trusting God begins understanding that you and I are fully loved. And in our journey of knowing God, we will discover why Jesus is truly trustworthy of our lives, our faith. But here is where I have found some tension. As I explore God, as I get to know Jesus through the scriptures, the problem for me is it's in this journey of trusting and understanding that I'm fully loved. The battle first begins in my mind. What I know about God, or what I think I know about God, or how God has been presented to me, or what I know about myself. I want to start this by making a clarification, because I said the same thing last week, but I want to continue that. I believe having a relationship with Jesus is an event. Like you and I can ask Jesus to, or put our trust in Jesus, and the promise of God is that he's going to be with us. And the promise of salvation is an event. It happens right away. You don't have to do it every day. It happens when you put your trust in Jesus. Now, healing and being a disciple, or the journey of transforming my patterns, my behaviors, that for me is what life is about. And I believe right now we're practicing in this earth what we get to experience for eternity. So what I want to talk to you for the next couple of minutes, I want to explore this idea of the mind, the brain, because for me has been very helpful to change in the way I think and view myself, and the way I think about God as well. Now, when I think about, I'm going to use the word brain or mind, I'm not just talking about this little, thing that exists around us in terms of just knowledge and information, because in the scriptures, actually, is this idea of mind, body, soul. Like is a more holistic view because they did not know that there was something like what you and I call brain when it says the mind, is they're not talking about an organ. Same as when we talk about, you maybe heard, especially we use this language with kids, have you received Jesus in your heart? That is not literal, right? Like this is something actually I don't even use with my kids. I said to my kids, do you want to follow Jesus? Do you put your trust in Jesus? You want to even surrender to Jesus, but Jesus doesn't just exist in one particular area of our body, right? Is this idea of a holistic view of God. So the mind is something that is embodied or is something we use to process things, emotions, and also is something that is relational. Our mind is just not information. And let me tell you what I mean by that. When a baby is born, he or she is born with hundreds of millions of neurons ready to like they're ready to be connected. And in the journey of this, the development of a child through relationships with the people closest to him or her, it comes this development of the functioning of these neurons connecting the dots. In other words, the mind depends upon human interaction in order for neurons to fire up and connect bridges. As there's all these things now, like I had the privilege to be with my wife when she delivered 3 of our babies. And one of the things they tell you now, right, to do a skin to skin, they have all this data now about you talking to the baby when it's in the belly of the mom. There is all these things that are happening since we're kids where being seen, being heard, hearing the voice of somebody develops trust, comfort, and this dependency of this relationship helps our brains grow and mature and develop. This is what makes part or the beginning of a healthy mind, a healthy bonding that our neurons there's happening in our body and in everything, our minds, that makes our brains flourish and our lives flourish as adults. You and I then, what happens even right now in our minds is a combination of things that we learn and also interactions that we're having on repeat over and over and over. And just how we can have those people that we trust and are nourishing and flourishing, how our brain interacts with or what the healthy connections our brain is making, we also experience connections that are not healthy. And we experience pain that creates a different type of connections. And to this, for the just sake of our conversation, I'm going to call wounds. You've heard the word trauma is all over, right? Everybody is using this word, but in reality, the word trauma is just a Greek word that means wound. So it's something that has been wounded. Now, whether we realize it or not, those connections have already been made. We have developed coping mechanisms for those things that have served us and those things that have not served us as well. There is stuff that we have adapted to. And some of those adaptations are a protection mechanism of things that we experience even in our childhood. And those sometimes wounds, or those sometimes for good or for bad, they affect how we see ourselves, our relationships, and the way we see the world. Now, the beautiful thing about this, and all this is leading to a conversation about how God sees us too. The beautiful thing is, from the very beginning of creation, there's this idea that God forms from the dust humanity. And the whole idea of you and I being formed, and then he gave breath to humanity, is this importance of our bodies being important, our minds, and this idea of relationships as well. So what I want to talk to you a little bit is what happens about these wounds that we experience, because the good news is that wounds are designed to heal. But the challenge is when we don't know if we've been wounded. I want to share with you that naturally you and I develop survival tools or mechanisms that serves us at one point, but many times as adults, they show up in unhealthy ways. And this is something I did not come up with this. I took a lot of notes, and I'm sharing basically my notes. And in that, I'm going to connect to my experience, because it's something I do want us to continue to be a community that constantly talks about this. And again, this is not because I believe you don't have a relationship with Jesus, or or this is about doing something in order for you to have a relationship with Jesus. Again, having a relationship with Jesus and salvation is an event. It can happen right now, right after this call, tonight. You can just declare, put your trust, surrender to Jesus, and you begin a relationship with Jesus. This is more this area of being healthy holistically as a human being, as a disciple of Jesus. And again, it's because he has served me that I want to share it with you. Dr. Gabe Verrier, and he's well known on a lot of this idea of our inner child. And he describes trauma or wounds in a way that this is what happens in the inside. And this is not necessarily the event that happened. The event may be traumatic, but an event is not the trauma. So we don't necessarily gonna go back to the event in my conversation with you. We're actually gonna talk about what happened after the event that may cause wounds and pain. And the interesting thing about, as I was learning, because I was with clinicians that are so well followers of Jesus, and they explained that they've been finding the difference between people who develop PTSD in war, in World War II, versus someone who did not develop PTSD, who lived the same experience. The only difference between those two people were that one, they had the tools to talk about the event, and two, they had people around them that support them. And this is why, for me, it's so important that we talk about this. Not because I'm saying that this should replace therapy, no, but because this can give you awareness, or it can give you a space for wounds to continue being part of the process of either healing or not letting to go much deeper. Now, I do want to make another clarification. I will be talking about something that I learned they call small t trauma. Because when we think of the word trauma, maybe you think of horrific events. And then what your mind says a lot of the times is, well, I cannot compare my experience because I'm not that bad because that somebody had it worse than me. But that's big T trauma. There is something also called little t trauma. Well, not called, but that's how they refer it to us. And this little t trauma is, I want to kind of give you a little list of this small t trauma to see, but down the road to see if you connect to any of this, because these have been beliefs or coping mechanisms that help us to survive when we were younger. And again, the way we see ourselves is a lot of it helps us see God differently. And the way we see God, then we begin seeing if Jesus is trustworthy. This is why it's so important for me that we have a conversation about our minds and what we think about who God is and who we are in Him. Another reason why I think this is important to bring it up as a conversation in our communities is because up to a few years ago, whenever we saw as humans, anyone with addiction, or as a society, people with addiction, people in jail, people homeless, I think our natural response, and I'm not saying us experience church, I'm thinking as humans, as society, our natural response was, what's wrong with them? How we can, what we need to fix them. They're broken. And as a result, judgment, a condemning mindset, focusing on either the wrong place or trying to help them. We were just focusing on the symptom. But in the last 30 years, but this is how, by the way, how they begin to, many pastors, they begin sharing this information with us. Studies have shown that 90 to 95% of people with addictions have a childhood wound, or they have a childhood trauma. And the helpful thing about this is that many times, and this is my experience of me growing up in the church, many times when I saw the addiction of a drug, I saw like drugs are the problem. Alcohol is the problem. Pornography is the problem. But if we understand this is the result of a deeper wound, then we can see that the drug is the solution that they have found for an inner pain they're trying to heal. The pornography is the solution they found for an inner emotion that they're trying to heal. Every single thing we can point out to something that it has developed into either a numbness I want to feel, a lack of awareness, or a desire to fulfill an emotion that wasn't fulfilled. And most likely that was first ignored or neglected in our childhood. Over 19% of people in prison have childhood trauma. Over 90% of domestic violence is with people with childhood trauma. And my hope is for us, it's not, my hope is that we're able to properly help each other and give more compassion to even things that we're able to express, so things don't stay hidden. And instead of thinking, wow, you really messed up, or wow, you continue struggling on the same thing, my hope is that we began using this phrase, I wonder what happened to me. I wonder what happened to you. I wonder what happened in your childhood. And the reason why I say this is because you know who was really good at this? Jesus. Every time he says, sin no more, before the sin no more, he saw them. He understood their past, or he brought up the reason why I wonder what happened. He didn't have to wonder. He said, this is what happened. I see the pain. I can feel that need. Sin no more. I don't want us to focus in our behaviors because our behaviors are an expression of pain inside of you and me. Things that were consciously or unconsciously developed on sometimes on very healthy ways and sometimes some unhealthy ways. But I want to remind you that what I'm going to share with you, name, and I'm going to give examples, these have become surviving tools that kept you and me safe from being or continuing being hurt. This idea of what happened to us and our reaction to some events with little t that I will name in a little bit. This is where you hear that when our body or our coping mechanism, or the idea of fly, fight, freeze, or fund, when we develop some kind of, whenever we experience something and we reacted in one of those ways, we developed a way to survive something that we lived in our childhood. This is not to blame our parents. This is not to blame the way you and I grew up. This is just awareness. Because you and I, and this is where I think it's so beautiful that we talk about this, you and I will repeat what we don't repair. And you don't know how many times meeting somebody, they told me, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to repeat. And it's not just saying I don't want to, actually unconsciously, by just fighting it, you will repeat it. It's actually by repairing and being curious and aware of what happened, then you will show up actually differently. So the pattern is not repeated. And this has a lot to do with even how you parent or how you, because a lot of this, by the way, those coping mechanisms, because they help you survive, they made you maybe successful at school. Those coping mechanisms help you get the job that you loved. It helped you being who you are. So there's good on that. But the difference is sometimes in relationships, when you start a formal relationship, when you're seeking intimacy with someone, or when you eventually have kids, things come to the surface that you're like, I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know why I'm feeling that way. I don't know why I'm following that pattern. And that's what I want to share a little light on today. The tools that basically make you survive in life. So here are some examples that you maybe feel that you have felt that I will call little t, things that may come up in a relationship, parenting, or even in your view of God. You may encounter self-esteem issues, anger issues, trust issues, authority issues, control issues, wearing a mask, perfectionism, and I will go a little bit deeper. People pleasing, boundaries issues, and people pleasing right here. Hypersensitive to criticism, negative mindsets, disassociating from in conflict, lack of regulation of emotions, stuffing emotions, needing distractions instead of dealing with emotions, fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of abandonment, fear of failure. And if we experience any of those things, you have developed, because you survived, you've developed mechanisms for that. Surviving tools. And those have become now beliefs because you're acting without knowing they're there, because they help you survive. So what I want to do is I want to give you not all the examples, but I want to tell you some of the things I saw in me and some of the ones that I remember. And I reach out to a friend of mine who's a pastor, who is also a therapist. And I ask him, hey, I'm going to talk about this. And he sent me a couple of slides and I will share them with you. And my hope is, again, awareness. My hope is that you are aware of what went on in your childhood. My hope is that we see each other more in our humanity. And I believe that God can use that for healing, for transformation, and for even closeness. So I have, give me 1 second. Let's see. So I will share a couple of inner child beliefs that may have a tendency to shape you even today. That even though we outgrown our childhood and we've matured, and even we move away from certain environments, these beliefs are still running the show behind the scene. And this, I will say, also makes us not the humans that God intended it to be, because we cover or we layer ourselves because at one point it serves us well. But now, when you want to connect with your kids, when you want to connect with certain emotions, when you want to connect in with your partnership, in your marriage, it's hard and it's difficult. I will name them, and at the end, my friend put kind of like a truth that can help. But my hope is not, it's gonna seem like, oh, David, you're talking about all these things, and it's not like magic, right? Once you see it, you're gonna be like, oh, I know now, it's changed. No, my hope is that maybe you write these things down, and at the end, we're gonna have time to talk about some of this. But I may go a little bit fast for just sake of time, and then we can talk more in the Q&R. Okay, the first one is this belief that maybe you learned as a child: I have to earn loved by being good. Someone who learned this as a child saw love as attached to something. There's the strings attached to either obedience, performance. As an adult, things that may come up is you may be an over-functioning adult in relationships. You're questioning yourself if you're enough. And there's this confusion perhaps between approval and loved. And this is why I'm sharing that all of this has to do even how you see your relationship with God, because maybe even you see your relationship with God, that there's strings attached to the God that loves you unconditionally. And this shape everything, every relationship. You know, as I will say, when it comes to this type of survival mechanism, these are people that maybe they're more human doers than human beings. There's more value in the doing because their value comes from their results. There's value in how people see me externally. There's value in that doesn't come from just being human. And my friend put this one phrase that can begin this, because all I want to do is awareness, that can begin seeing life a little bit different if you feel you have someone who believes you have to earn love. Love isn't something that you earn. It's something you receive. For me, it's so beautiful that just how from the very beginning, God creates humanity and gives them a garden without them doing anything yet. It's a lot of things that come after that fall, but God declares them love and that they can have something they can enjoy. The same way God acknowledged and says, I love my son before he even did any miracle or started his ministry. And sometimes for us, it's very hard to understand that unconditional love that began from the very beginning with you and me. Sorry, I can stay in each one of this forever, but I have to move on. 2, another inner child belief, it's not safe to need anyone. Maybe you had people who take care of you that were unreliable, unsafe, maybe in overwhelm all the time. So we learn to cope with that, that needing was dangerous. So now we keep emotions at a distance. We rather do everything ourselves rather than trusting on someone because we can do it better, right? But there's even this desire of being too much. This is a childhood maybe that likes safety around them. And even this begins even affecting our identity. Well, all of them actually affect our identity. Intimacy is difficult. Connecting is difficult. And a truth that can begin reshaping this, my friend put, intimacy begins where self-protection ends. And this idea of me being guarded all the time. And again, maybe you don't identify with this. And maybe there is something about you've been asking, why is it so hard for me to trust, or feeling I'm too much to other people? 3, if I show how I feel, I will be rejected. Here, maybe you grew up in a house with anger in the house, or one of your guardians, withdrawals or shame was a big part of the people that were part of your beginning years. And as an adult, there is this conflict of or maybe this idea of appearing like everything is calm, but chaos inside, or avoid conflict, or in situations of feeling certain emotions that we're told that were wrong emotions to feel, you're replacing with sarcasm, jokes, And part of this is if you show up with your heavy emotions, at one point, perhaps you experience rejection or just simply neglect. This is the whole idea also of living not being seen. We use that phrase a lot here. Not being able to be known, and when we use the word intimacy, right, we describe it as into me, you see. You're able to see the real me. There may be also a way when things get difficult to manipulate feelings or manipulate the feelings of other people by showing up fake, not real. Healing means letting safe people see the real you. And healing in this is something that even when we go into our questions and response time, one of the reasons we don't call them questions and answers is because we know as you share things, the most important thing is your awareness. Some of the times you may say, but I got questions. Can you tell me what you think? And we're happy to tell you a response. But a lot of the times we know is you processing something for the first time. Or maybe even we know that it's the first time you're going to share something and not everybody's going to go like, oh, well, that's not right. Rejecting your emotions. So we're literally practicing something that perhaps as a childhood you never had, even if you're wrong. But it's something that we're saying consciously, intentionally. This person, I don't know how their childhood was. Let him share. And we acknowledge where they are. 4, I have to fix things to be safe. You know what I should have done? Maybe we should have gone into a grid and then you can raise your hand and every time you felt like some of this to make it a little more lighter. Because I don't know if I'm seeing just most of my face. I don't see a lot of your faces. Okay. I have to fix things to be safe. Maybe this some middle child kind of experiences because you tend to be the mediator, the helper, the peacekeeper. But you also learn if I don't control it, it's gonna hurt me eventually, or it's gonna hurt. And as adult, some of the responses that we have, we feel responsible of others people's emotions. We feel anxious when things are unsettled. We tend to also take things that are not our fault. We make them as our fault. And this is, again, something that is a coping mechanism that you develop consciously or unconsciously. And the truth could help to begin this sense of awareness is to see safety not as our responsibility, that we have to manufacture safety. The safety is something that we can receive. And I love that the descriptions of the guy of the Bible are full of safety, like fortress. We even use the word, like even the word temple or the word, escaping, like a tent. When Jesus says he came in flesh and he became a tent among us, it was this idea of a place of protection and gathering, place where you can be safe. And for some of us, we want to manufacture safety because we did not experience safety growing up. 5, and I only have 8, so I'm getting there. If I don't do it perfectly, I'll be punished. Perfection wasn't about excellence, it was about survival. You learn that making a mistake is highly costly. And also, it's costly to love. It's costly to see the dignity of others. And as an adult, some of the relationship we have formed, we live on a fear bubble of messing up. We are overly critical, and maybe procrastination is a way to avoid failure, because I'd rather not do it than fail. Don't feel guilty about any of this. All of this is how you learn to survive in your childhood. These were tools you developed because your body, your mind, your entire being, the whole idea is for you to adapt. But maybe in this area, like sometimes when it's unconscious, we maybe see people that live like this, but they go like, I don't have any problems. Fine. A truth that can begin again seeing a different perspective on this tool is knowing that perfectionism is a prison, but self-compassion is the key. For me, this one was a big one because I heard a lot of things growing up, or not even by my parents, just by people around me. I grew up in a Christian home where every time I messed up, I put myself very, very low. Remember last Sunday I talked about spiraling upwards? I spiraled down hard.
David, sorry to interrupt you. Is there a
Mhm.
slide for this one?
I don't have it.
Number
Oh,
number 5?
sorry. Thank you.
Okay, no
Thank you.
problem. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Beth. Um, and I have like 3 screens right now, so thank you for telling me. I didn't know I had it up. I didn't have it up. Um, when I began seeing the self-compassion that I needed, I actually began being more realistic and true about my sin issue. I began to not aim at stopping perfection, but aim actually at surrounding myself with people where I experience safety, love, and value. And in reality, when I go to God, I see a God that is super compassionate with me. And this is why I told you that at the very beginning, when I give you this quote by St. Augustine, knowing thyself is the beginning of knowing God. A lot of this, it was me, a hurdle I had in my own mind, how I saw myself, not how God see me, even in the middle of my sin. And this began to open up something in me, compassion, self-compassion, that has been a really healing experience. Number 6, my needs are not important. If your needs were ignored, mocked, or met with anger, you just better get quiet. Um, avoiding asking as an adult, avoiding asking for help. It's difficult for you to ask someone to help you. There's guilt when it comes to self-care. And there's this resentfulness too, while maybe we calling it kindness. And the idea behind this is a little bit of also being if I'm treating you one way, I'm expecting to be treated the same way. Let me see if I can in my family, this are things that we've talked about, because sometimes gatherings in families, when you say no to a family gathering, people may say, they don't care. It's not important to them. And there's this lack of communication, or this lack of clarity of what matters to you. What's important to you. A little light on this is to know that needs are part of our humanity. Needs are not selfish, and your needs matter too. All right. If I rest, I'm lazy. Now we have a couple of doers here. So also here, this is a big one. Well, let me just, why am I throwing all of you under the bus? This is also me. This is actually something I've been wrestling with, or I've wrestled earlier. Business was safety, productivity meant value, rest felt like weakness. We internalize only those who produce deserve to play hard. I've actually said that. I've actually said, until I make certain amount of money, then I can play hard like those people. As I am playing hard with some of those people, and they're like, I'm comparing myself because I cannot stop until I get there. As an adult, we equate stillness with guilt. We work through burnout, tie your worth to your results. A light on this is to begin shining light. It's to recognize that our bodies are not machines, and that we're not our results. You're way more than your results. And number 8, something is wrong with me. If no one reflected your emotions, affirm your worth, or made space for your uniqueness, you're likely blamed yourself. As an adult, some of this, these are the people that they go from a conference to a conference, from a book, from another book, from another book to another book of self-development, coaching. That's on Instagram. Everyone's a coach. In fact, today with my slides, I feel like a coach. I'm kidding. It's a joke. I don't. I talked to Beth about this. I'm like, never gonna call myself. Well, never mind. Cross country coach, yes. I'm just kidding. My coach is here. This idea of being fear of being found out, and this was actually this. See, I went to a little bit of comedy because this is also me. We stay busy to outrun shame. To outrun deeper emotions, we rather just go for what's next. The next book, the next conference. Also, where is a pool of a lot of something is wrong with me? Churches. Because they'll make you busy. And we find value on business rather than deep work. And they're volunteering on everything. And they know a lot of scripture. But there's deep wounds that I have deep wounds where, because I'm valuing more what I'm doing in order to deal with these wounds, um, I get confused of doing the work instead of being the work. This is something, and you heard me say this here in our community, people who see themselves broken, or people, and I'm going to make something clear here, people who need to hear, sorry, that they're broken. I always tell people that there's a difference between me finding out that I need God because I'm broken than somebody else telling me you need God because you're broken. These are the people who need to hear you need God because you're broken, which is very different than getting to the point to say, God, I need you because I am broken. And this is the difference between reading the scriptures to do something in me as reading the scriptures so I can show you what they're telling you. What is the area where you need to change? What is the area that you need to remove? And we zero in on certain sins that we think they're better than the others or deeper than the others. And that's when a lot of this is, people go into this unhealthy pattern without even knowing, because it was at one point a surviving tool. All right. Oh, the light on this one to begin shifting or begin being aware. You were never broken as a child. Maybe you experienced being unprotected. And there's a difference, because most of these people, what they're seeking actually is a place of safety, place of protection. All right. All of this, I wouldn't say, I want to make this clarity, that my goal is not to bring guilt or shame in any of this, but it is to bring an awareness about that. I think it makes us less human because we layer on things that is not really us. And yet the God that I believe in is a God who wants to unlayer all of these things. So you can be human again. The created human being, which without the fear, the shame, the guilt, free. Human, free to grow, free to learn. And the idea of the inner child is not necessarily that they use it as a metaphor, but more as a nervous system that is reactive, or a nervous system that is activated. So now I want to leave you, as we close, I want to leave you with something that why in the scriptures, to me, this has opened up the idea to get curious with my inner child. I want to read to you Romans 12. And this is the verse that talks about, I urge you to, and I'm gonna read it, but I'm gonna paraphrase it, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice and present your bodies. It says, in the idea or the what Paul uses is to be transformed by the renewal of your mind. But before we get to the transform of renewal of our mind in chapter 12, because that chapter begins with therefore, we go to chapter 11. And in chapter 11, God is reminding the love that he had for his people of Israel, and how now in the New Testament, we're grafted, or we're part of the family of that love, And he even ends 11 with the doxology or a doxology. And then he goes, therefore. So our identity, you're fully loved first. Now, therefore, I urge you. And he says, I urge you by the mercy of God. It doesn't tell you, I urge you by the word of God, the edict of God. I urge you by the mercy of God to present your bodies as a living, whole sacrifice. And it doesn't say present your minds, present your thinking, present your Bible memorization, but presents your bodies as a living sacrifice. Do not conform by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And this renewing of your mind, up to a few years, 30 years ago, 40 years ago with neuroscience, we did not believe your mind could change. We, scientists, scientists did not believe our minds could change. And 2,000 years ago, Paul wrote brilliantly about this idea that your body, your mind, the relationships that we have around us is constantly shaping us. That there's stuff that shaped us before, and that there's a possibility or this opportunity for you to renew and transform your mind. I really late. I had a little exercise in terms of this transforming your mind, but what I love to do is I'll close in prayer, and then we go into question and response, and then I can share in the questions and response a small exercise that I learned in terms of this process of renewing our minds. And my goal, again, with this whole thing is not to tell you you have to be a certain human to be loved by God. The love of God is unconditional. You can have a relationship with him today, and that's an event. An event meaning that you can surrender your life with Jesus right now. This idea of having a healthy mind is a constant, according to Paul, is something that we bring awareness to, and we begin unlayering these things that we call it sin that don't make us be real humans. This is something that I'm learning, something I wanted to share with you, and I'm open to your thoughts too. But before that, let me pray for us. And then, I have a video. Our Spanish community back here, Tiff? Yes? Okay. I want to show you a video, and voy a enseñarles un video. Gracias por regresar. And on this video, it's really short. It's a little heavy, but here's I want to prepare. There's gonna be an example of an actual child. They did this exercise with a child. I don't want you to view yourself as the mom, especially if you have kids. Even if you're a dad and a mom right now, I actually want you to view yourself as the child. Because this is about us being aware of what happened to us in order to change, not to see how we showing up right now and saying, I don't want to be that. I need to stop it. That's not the goal. See yourself as the child, and actually that's going to serve you better later on. Okay, let's go for the video, and then I'll dismiss all of us.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm my good girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, come on, why aren't we doing this? Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
Here is what I love about the video. And again, I hope you did really hard not to put yourself in the mom position. Am I doing this right? Have I messed up my kids? Put yourself in yourself as a child, because this is so beautiful. Our goal is not to be perfect with our kids. We can't. Our goal is not none of what happened is to find a blame of how and what we experience in our childhood. Our goal always is to be restorers or create the bridge for restoration. Meaning, in my breakdown, to acknowledge, let me connect again. Let me acknowledge my breakdown. Let me rebuild the trust. That is the best thing we can do, because not only we're gonna create the bond that is needed in that moment, we're actually modeling to the next generation, to everyone around us, that we believe in a God that is not seeking perfection, but restoration. So no matter, as the kids grow up, no matter what they've done, they can always go to a Father who will be there for restoration. Dear God, thank you for just a community who is open to love you holistically with everything that we get to offer to you. Our mind, our heart, our soul, our strength. And Father, I pray that you saw this, everything that I share, that if I share something that is not helpful, that take it away and will be forgotten. But whatever it is to build up, whatever is to connect, to create restoration, that you bring that to the forefront this week, that we may know what to do with this, that we may go to you with curiosity and awareness, that you begin this process of healing, that we may use our community as well as this process of continue building a healthy mind. In Jesus' name, I pray. Amen.